Hey there, thanks for stopping by. Welcome back to the From My Perspective podcast. As always, my name is not important, but some of the topics we cover might be to you. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to everyone who streamed the first episode and those who wandered over to our Twitter page to join in the conversation or add their extra little bit. It is very much appreciated. If you want to join the discussion or bring something up that we haven't talked about before on the From My Perspective podcast, you can do so by wandering over to Twitter and finding us at FMP Podcast. That is FMP Podcast on Twitter. Give us a follow and let us know what you think about the podcast. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to cover. So today, what I wanted to talk about was a continuation of what we spoke about in the last podcast at the very end about trying new things. More specifically today about trying new things and being okay with being rubbish at them when you first start. So as I said last time, that I have started 2 new things recently, and that is this podcast, which you are listening to right now. Thank you so much for being here. And the second one was that I bought an acoustic electric guitar, and I received it the day after that podcast went up. About the day after that I ordered it. I was very, very excited. I am still excited about it. But I just want to tell you a little story before we go into how that's going. When I was a kid, I was pretty natural at the things that I didn't try at. So in school, I wasn't the smartest kid, but I wasn't low level. I was that kind of middle kid that sort of slipped through everything. And the things that I was good at, I was naturally good at. It didn't take a lot of effort on my part to get through. And there wasn't really anything that I cared about growing up that I really wanted to get better at. So as a little kid, I did the normal things that little kids do, little girls do. I did gymnastics, I did swimming, I did ballet, and this was before I even started school. And then when I started school and throughout school, I stopped anything that would help me be a better person for trying new things, if you understand what I mean. That mindset of longevity and not instant success. And I think one of the things where I started to realize that I wasn't very good at the whole longevity thing was I signed up for cricket. And when I look back on it now, I think, what the hell? Why did I sign up for cricket? Cricket to me now is such a boring sport. And look, it was boring to me then because I spent most of the time when I was on the field, doing cartwheels and all that sort of stuff, and I'd miss the ball all the time. And I realized pretty quickly that wasn't something that I wanted to do, so I stopped playing because I was bored, but potentially I was bored because I just wasn't naturally good at it. Anyway, fast forward to high school, secondary or intermediate school, I guess, because I went to a school where intermediate and high school was joined together. So it was a high school that went from year 7 to year 13. So from 10 years old, I was at that school. And my mum bought me a guitar for Christmas, a beautiful pink guitar. And I was excited about learning then. And I went to these itinerant music lessons in my school. And I only went a couple of times before I realized that it was so bloody boring being there with that teacher. And I want to say that it was completely the teacher. It was their job to make it interesting. But the thing is, the other kids that were there in that lesson with me, they continued to play guitar. So I can't exactly say that it was that teacher's problem because it was me. I didn't like the fact that I had to try, that I had to really focus on trying to get better. So I quit those pretty quickly. And I've done the same thing with volleyball. I've done the same thing with rugby. I've done the same thing with so many things that I've tried to pick up because I wasn't instantly good at it, or I didn't have instant success with it. That it really has been an issue for me, even now moving into my adult life, where I'm either good at something or I don't try at all. Because when I'm instantly good at something, it's generally because I'm not trying at all. So that's something that I have had to, work on to try and be better with, is that sense of you're not going to be good at everything all the time. So you have to get to a point where you're okay with sucking at something for a long time before you get better. And that's where I'm at now with playing guitar. So I'm at the stage now where I'm sort of like crying out for these calluses to form on my fingers, whilst also realizing that they don't form if you don't play. You don't get better at it by not trying. You get better by sucking at it for a long time. So that's, yeah. So I got the guitar, at this point, it's 3 days ago now. And I got so excited when it came in. It's a beautiful acoustic electric guitar. It's an all black. It's very, very sleek. And as soon as I got it out of the box, I did the whole tuning thing and all that sort of stuff, and I looked into ways that I can teach myself. So that's another silly, stubborn thing I have. I am not a huge fan of learning off other people until I feel like I'm at a place where I'm proficient enough that I won't be wasting their time with silly basic rubbish. So I was talking to my partner, and he said that it probably is a good idea to get some professional lessons, and I totally agree with that. I think that learning off someone else is very, very beneficial, but as I said, until I feel like I'm proficient enough in the basic stuff, where I'm not, going to be sitting in an hour lesson just trying to hold down a couple of strings so that it sounds clear, I won't be going for a professional lesson or anything like that until I feel like I'm at a point where, again, I'm not wasting that other person's time. But I think in terms of not being good straight off the bat, I think the way that I've moved into doing guitar this time has been a lot more beneficial to me in a sense, because as I said in the last podcast, I started using a ukulele at the start of the year, and those are deceivingly easy to learn and to be able to write songs or play songs with, and then it's just about me knowing that I can do that with a stringed instrument, that is guitar-like in an essence. Although ukuleles only have 4 strings, it was a good starting point for me to then realize I like writing songs like this, but I wish it had a more fuller sound, which to me the logical next step was, it was a 6-string guitar, like a traditional guitar. So that, in an essence, gave me the drive to be able to go onto that, to be able to go onto the guitar. And that idea of me wanting to be able to, write songs in the future has also been one of those things that has kept me going. And it's going to be something that I'm going to keep coming back to. You'll probably end up hearing about it every couple of podcasts about how it's going and how the calluses are growing, all that sort of thing. But so for the past 3 days, it has been a real case of me consciously going back every hour or hour and a half to just play for, sort of 15, 20 minutes at a time, to get my fingers used to holding down the strings, and to start to encourage those calluses to form. And I don't think I've ever been in a situation like that before, where I have tried something new, been absolutely rubbish at it, but still being in a situation where I'm saying, no, you have to go back. You have to go back because you want to do better at this. It's never ever been heard of. And I think that's sort of the same thing going on with my podcasting, is that I've repurposed one of my notebooks, which I used for, intention work and that sort of stuff, to write down ideas and things that I could talk about during a podcast. And I do that when I have nothing else to do, or I'm bored or anything like that. And I think it's important for me to do that because it really puts me in the mindset of, well, you're putting all this work in. What's the point in then not following through and actually sitting down and recording? You have everything you need at your disposal. You're rubbish at it right now, but I'm assuming that this is going to be a case of exposure, where after a long enough period of time, it'll become sort of second nature to myself. And that includes listening back to recordings, thinking about, pitch, pace, tone, all that sort of stuff, and just reflecting on how it's going and how I can better myself. I think that's really, really important when you are trying something new, that you have some way of recording down what's happened, whether that be, physically recording a video, or, recording audio as I'm doing now, or even just thinking back and writing down what happened, and then taking the time to go through, reread it, re-listen to it, and think about what went wrong, what went right, what can I do better next time, what can I do to make sure that I am better next time. Because, it's all well and good to go through and try something different, but until you actually sit down and think about it and reflect on how that went, you don't really know what works and what doesn't, or you don't necessarily know the reason behind why something works and why something doesn't work. So I would say that that is a big part of being okay with sucking at something new to you, is that remembering that it's a journey. It's not a case of being at the destination as soon as you start with something new, and being okay with not being perfect. And I think that perfectionism is definitely one of the things that pull people back from trying new things, and giving up on things that they're not immediately good at, is that sense of perfectionism. I have a case where whenever I do something like cleaning the house, I start cleaning and then I start seeing other things. The more you do something, the more you see, I guess, is that part where, you pick up all the stuff in the room, and then you see that the floor is untidy. So you think, oh, okay, I'll vacuum the floor. And then you vacuum the floor, and then you really start to see the things like little stains on the ground, or the skirting around the outside, that wood skirting around the outside not being as clean, and then you go through the case of scrubbing that skirting, and a job that should have taken 10 minutes to complete, just pick up the room or vacuum the room, has become this day-long thing where even when you've gone through all the trials of scrubbing all the skirting, you don't come away feeling good about it because it still doesn't look like it's clean, because of that sense of the more you know, the more you have to learn. And that's one of the things that stops myself from going through and doing anything new, because it's a case of, well, if this is what I know now, what don't I know? And once I finally learn how to do, this particular chord, where am I going to go to next? There's so many options that I can go for because there's so many things that I don't know. And then you learn something new, and then there's even more things that you don't know. But I guess that's the same for, scientists, or, scientists in any range of the fields of science, is that they'll research something and they'll find something, and then it will answer maybe one question, but it'll open up another 5 to 10 questions. Well, if this is the case, then what causes this? So it kind of feels like it's a never-ending cycle. But for people that are constantly looking forward, it's almost like a never-ending learning cycle where, well, now I need to learn this, now I need to learn that, but what about this, but what about that? And it takes a reflective person to finish a task. I've learnt this and I can see that these things I don't know, but let me just stop for a second and turn around and look behind me and reflect on what I've already done, what I've already experienced, what I already know. And then from there, I can reevaluate the whole reason I went into this. I wanted to do this in order to find the next steps that I need to take. That will be the steps that fulfill me most as a person. So eventually I want to be able to play guitar enough so that I can write songs. Now, writing songs to me doesn't necessitate me learning how to pick individual strings, because right now I don't want to focus on that kind of music. I just want to focus on strumming chords, changing chords to be able to put together a song. So looking at that for what it is allows me to then go through what I'm learning and finish a specific task, maybe learning how to do the C chord or the G chord, and doing that, stopping before moving forward and thinking and looking back and thinking, is that going to help me get to where I want to be? Is that going to help me be able to get to a place where I can comfortably write songs? And the truth is that, yes, learning a G chord is definitely going to help me write songs with strumming. Just for clarification and an idea behind something that wouldn't work, I've toyed with just learning how to do chords from this music app called Tabs, and it's literally just an app filled with a whole bunch of different songs written in Tab and written in a case where it shows you where each of the chords sit, on the frets. And I've really enjoyed doing that because it has meant that I've been able to go through at my pace to decide what I want to focus on next. So I started on This is going to sound so lame. I started on that one song that every guy at a party knows how to play, which is Wonderwall, because it is one of the easiest songs to start off with. I know the tune, I know where I'll have to change chords without having to really look at the timing, and I know the song, so I can play the song in the background and play along with it. The other app that I've been using has been an app called Musician, and I have been aware of Musician for a while because I used it at some points to extend my playing ability on a ukulele, and it starts with chords again, and then for some reason it goes on to picking, which, for someone who's just generally wanting to learn how to play guitar, is probably generally pretty helpful. But I found it instead of a source of learning and a source of enjoyment of learning, I found it a source of contention, because it was not something that my brain found value in. I struggled through that lesson, and I was getting very, very frustrated and really, really grumpy because I wasn't able to do this, because after reflecting on it, going back and thinking, well, why was I getting so frustrated at that? It's okay that I wasn't good at it. Like, I kept trying, but I found that I gave up pretty quickly because I didn't care for it. The first part where, you were learning how to strum chords, I loved it. I absolutely loved being able to do that, and it helped me immensely on my mission of being able to write songs, or learn how to play guitar to write songs. But the picking, when I look back on it and I reflect on it, I didn't enjoy it at all. Not because I just wasn't good at it, because I was continuing to try, but I didn't want to continue to try because, to me, it wasn't part of my goal. It wasn't part of my mission of being able to, play guitar in a way that will allow me to write songs for myself. So I stopped using Musician at that point. I'm going to go back to it just to find different parts of lessons which will help my journey and will help me continue along to reach my goal that I want to reach. But I think that is also a pretty important thing to think about when you're starting something new. Making sure that you're setting goals, and you're setting smaller goals that fit with the way you want to achieve something. So that's not to say that the picking wouldn't be any good for someone else that wants to learn how to play guitar. Absolutely. I just know that for me, it's not going to help me along my journey that I want to achieve as of yet. So eventually I do want to go into picking, as I said, because eventually when I feel like I'm prepared enough, I do actually want to buy another guitar. I want to buy an electric guitar with an amp and all that sort of stuff. But until I feel comfortable with my goal and achieving my first goal, it's nowhere near on my radar, essentially. It will come eventually, but just not yet. So some advice that I would love to pass on to those millennials and Gen Zers who grew up in a system, in a schooling system where, or still do, where they are rewarded for every little thing that they do, and that has become part of your value system or your reward system, so your extrinsic value, where you do something for something. One of the things I would highly, highly recommend that you do is set goals that are, what are they called? They're called SMART goals. Something that's specific, something that's measurable, something that you can actually attain, something that's relevant, and something that's time-based, so that you're not just sitting there with some, lofty dream of, oh, well, I want to I want to be a rock star on the stage, and and I'm playing guitar because of that. That's ridiculous. It's not something that even incredibly talented guitarists, they can't even achieve that, many of them. So my goal of setting, I want to be able to play guitar proficiently enough that I can write my own songs. And even that, to be fair, is quite a stretch. When I think about that, I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve that until probably a year down the track, where I have, learned enough chords and learned enough guitar theory where I can look at, the common chord progressions. But keeping that ultimate goal in mind each time I think about how I'm going to get there, I am in essence setting smaller periodic goals through that. So my first goal for this week was to learn how to play Wonderwall. And even that can be quite lofty. So I pulled that down another notch. I am going to learn how to successfully play each of the chords in Wonderwall. And there's only 5. And one of them only comes up maybe once or twice. So really it's a 4-chord song. And so my goal was to make sure that I can get through each of those without it sounding all, plinky, because my fingers aren't holding the strings down far enough, or I've got another finger touching another string, something like that. So, set the goals. Don't just set the goals, but when you achieve those goals, be prepared to reward yourself. Because if you're that kind of person that you're not intrinsically motivated, so you're not just doing things for you, even sometimes that works, but more often than not, if you're someone that doesn't tend to focus on things that they're not good at for long enough, then maybe you do need that sort of reward cycle where you specifically do something that makes you happy because you've achieved that small goal. And that could be anything. That could be watching your favorite TV show. That could be having a snack of some kind, that you don't normally have, or going out. So for me, and this is going to sound kind of ridiculous, but for me, I don't tend to do things in front of people unless I'm comfortable enough. And that in itself for me is a reward, if I'm able to feel comfortable enough to be able to play something in front of someone. So if it comes up that I've managed to play enough of the song where it sounds good enough to me that I'm comfortable playing that in front of someone, then I will do so. And I've done that already with my partner. So I played it and he couldn't understand what the song was, which kind of bummed me out a bit. But once I sang along to it, he could actually hear it. So yay, thumbs up. And then I gave myself a break. I said, cool, you've done that now. You can take a break. You can sit down with your partner and watch an episode of the Gilmore Girls, which is what we're watching at the moment on Netflix. But yeah, so be ready to reward yourself when you achieve that goal. Setting goals that are actually achievable in a specific time period. And then moving on from that, as I was saying before about reflecting, once you've achieved that goal, or once you've done something, or once you've hit a hard place, just stop and think about what happened, what you did well, what you didn't do well, what you could do next time. Think about some other techniques that you could use, because if it didn't work, then you need to do something different in order for it to change. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. So reflection is a huge, huge one to sort of soften the blow of not being good at something straight away. And I guess one of the very, very last things that I think you could use as a takeaway is to just let it go. Get over yourself. Be brave to try something new. Be brave to to suck at something that you're not good at straight away. Nobody's naturally good at everything at all. Nobody's naturally good at anything, and anything that's worth doing is worth enduring some pain, is worth working hard on, is worth persevering with. Because realistically, in a year's time, or even 6 months' time, when I've been working on it every single day, I'm going to look back at today or 2 days ago and think, man, I'm so glad I started. I'm so glad that I set those goals. I'm so glad that I persevered. And I'm so glad that I took that time to reflect, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be where I am today. I'd still be back there. And when I look into the future with my guitar playing and with this podcast, realistically, is I see myself in a better place, with more knowledge, with more skill, and with a better outcome, better product than what I have now. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to. So I guess if I wanted to say one thing to finish this all off, just try it out, try something new for long enough to be able to know whether or not it's something you want to continue with. That being said, if you try something and you hate it and it's not for you, you don't necessarily have to persevere with that either. Just listen to yourself and have a thought about whether what your mind is saying is because you're not automatically good at something, or whether you just really hate what you're doing. So that, I think, is about where we're going to stop it for today. Thank you so much for joining in from my perspective podcast. My name is always is not important, but I hope that you have found the topic today something that is important to you and that you can take away with. As always, I would love to hear what you thought about today's podcast. You can find me on Twitter, as I said, at the FMP Podcast, at FMP Podcast on Twitter. Give us a follow over there and let us know what you think. You can also find us on anchor.fm, where all of my links to all of my different platforms are. I think we're on Spotify now, which is awesome. We're also on Google Podcasts, and some other awesome ones over there as well. Hope to add to that in the future, but as I was saying, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful week. And I hope that you take this and you try something new, because it's definitely going to be worth it in 2 months' time, in 6 months' time, or even a year. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.